Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I wanted to not talk about a book, but rather talk about the September, what happened there, and what's going to happen in October. It's the September wrap-up October TBR video because I like blending those two together rather than making separate videos. It saves time. So I read a lot of books in September, a lot of short stories, a lot of poems, some of which I didn't talk about on the channel. One book I read was Abby that I didn't talk about. I went back and reread that, and I noticed a lot of things, like how Mr. Okax, the owl who sort of like is a terrifying despot in the forest that they're in, he's like, only I can help the mice from their troubles. Like, only I can fix the problem. And it's like, I've heard that before. You know, a despot who's like, you gotta listen to me because only I can save you from the trouble that you might find yourself in. And, you know, you shouldn't listen to those people, and you should do exactly what Abby did, and you should fight those people at every turn, and, you know, challenge what people commonly believe. And when they say that, like, oh, this person is our hero, well, you have to question what they're doing if they're not doing heroic things. And even if they are doing heroic things, why have we placed them on a pedestal? We gotta ask those questions. Those are good questions to ask. Anyway, yeah. So let's start with the wrap up. Throughout September, I've read a number of books. One of them was Man in the High Castle. I think it was a very fine book. It wasn't what I was looking for in a alternate history book about what would have happened if the Nazis had taken over America and split it with the Japanese, who also laid claim to the Pacific side. I was kind of expecting, I don't know, something more a little jazzy, but it gave Philip K. Dick just gave us, as Noah said, from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse, a thought experiment, where you just told a picture in time of different characters kind of dealing with this regime like 15 years later, and also the possibility that the new elected leader of Germany would be a terrifying despot who wants to kill even more people. So it wasn't quite what I wanted, and I'd recommend it, but, you know, it's not something I enjoyed. I also read Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver, a great book. I read it before, and in the video I made, I said it's one of my top 10 books that I've ever read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the Groundhog Day formula. I love the adventure that Samantha King goes through, how she's reliving the same day where she dies over and over again, and she goes from like despair to anger to hope to, you know, like a willingness to want to change. And I strongly recommend that book. It's out there, and it's worth reading because it's very emotional and very very good. Like, it's hard to find adjectives to describe it, but I enjoyed it. I also read A Comedy of Errors by Shakespeare. I read it because I did not have a fun time with The Tempest, and I wanted to return to Shakespeare, and I thought, well, why not read something I've never read before again with The Comedy of Errors? And I enjoyed it. Like, it was funny. I enjoyed the mix-up with the identities. And I like Shakespeare's like style in this one. I don't think he nailed it in The Tempest, because it felt kind of flat to me. But in here, he's able to like use whimsy and like punning to a great extent, and I feel that it really helps like sell this play, whereas it didn't do that with The Tempest. So I'm looking forward to reading more Shakespeare because of this. I also read The Lost World by Michael Crichton. It was a good book. Michael Crichton is really good at action and building up tension, but he's not really good with execution. And sometimes his protagonist, which I really feel like he models after himself, like, and that's probably why they fall flat. Like, I don't think The Lost World had a good protagonist, because a lot of people like found Ian Malcolm to be very annoying in the first Jurassic Park book. But then, like, the movie came out, and Ian Malcolm was played by Jeff Goldblum, and he was a cool, calm character, and he actually lived, unlike in the first book where he died. And I feel like the fan hype around Ian Malcolm is why Michael Crichton brought him back. But, like, he didn't bring back the movie version. He brought back the book version, and the book version, like, you rooted for that guy to die. So it was kind of hard to get hyped about, like, Ian Malcolm, and he doesn't really feel consequential in the course of the story at all. I also read the second Artemis Fowl book, The Arctic Incident. I felt it wasn't as good as the first one, because the first one had an exciting siege story going on. And the second book, it doesn't really feel like there's enough grounding it. You got a story about Artemis trying to rescue his father from the mafia, and a story about the fairies trying to hold off a goblin revolution. The stories don't really connect, and there's not enough to keep both of them going. And the villains, like between the mafia and Ocpoeber, they aren't really that strong, and it just creates a book that's worth skipping, in my opinion. I also read Princess in Pink by Meg Cabot. I believe it's the 5th book in the Princess Diaries series. It's pretty bad in terms of like what goes on in the story. It's one of the it keeps getting worse in the series because Meg Cabot seems to be becoming a bad writer. Maybe it's because she's splitting herself against multiple projects, and that's never good, because you can't devote all your strength and energy to one specific project. But I feel like the biggest problem is aesthetics, because this story is titled Princess in Pink, which is an allusion to Pretty in Pink. However, in Pretty in Pink, the movie, one of my favorite movies, the main character, played by Molly Ringwald, is from the wrong side of the track. She's poor, and a guy who is richer, more wealthy, falls for her, and it wants to invite her to prom or a dance of some kind, and she has to deal with the fact that, like, the other wealthy people in the school ostracize her, and, like, she can't really be go with this guy because of what it represents. Ultimately, she does, though. And the Princess Diaries series, Mia is very wealthy. She even before she was told she was a princess, like, her father sent her mom money, and she was never in want of anything. And the other character in the story, Michael, who she wants to go to prom with, he is also wealthy. His parents are psychologists, and he lives in a fancy apartment in New York City, which can't be that cheap even in the year 2002. So, like, It highlights how Meg Cabot is going for aesthetics, but she doesn't understand what she's borrowing from, which, it sinks the book. Like, so, try harder, Meg Cabot. I also read a number of short stories last month. Everything Inside by Edwidge Danticat, which was a solid book, very amazing, and I really enjoyed reading it. And Lucas from A Bits of Lit also jumped on that based on my recommendation, and he said he enjoyed it somewhat. So one of the best short stories without inspection that I've read on this channel. And I feel like that story alone is worth checking out and getting more about Haiti and the Haitian immigrant experience in America. I also read Jumanji by Chris Van Allsburg. Very fun, worth reading. It was a children's story, and I enjoy checking out those kind of stories on this channel because they're like short, and they don't require that too much thought, but they still illustrate what short stories can do. Then I also read Mexico, a collection of short stories by an author who lives in Mexico part-time in between living in Virginia. I thought the short story that I read, The Chef and El Chapo, was good, but in the context of the entire collection of the short story series of Mexico, it felt a little racist because it painted Mexico as a lawless wasteland where it's filled with corruption and death and murder, and I feel like that's not an accurate picture of Mexico, especially in this period where you have a president who is saying, like, Mexico is filled with rapists and whatnot. We can't be anywhere near Mexico. And I feel that's unfair, especially because America created a lot of the problems in Mexico. And so I can't recommend the short story collection because it's irresponsible, in my opinion. I also read Mr. Bones by Paul Theroux. It's fine, but it was very forgettable a couple weeks later, and I don't really remember what I read about it. It wasn't a lot of fun. The short story that I read about called Mr. Bones was interesting, but you know, I don't think I'm going to carry it with me forever. I also read The Wrong Heaven by Amy Bonifant. A specific short story from there was Little Sister, which I found to be very sad and like emotional, and it really touched me. And a lot of the short stories in the collection were pretty good. So I do think it's worth checking out there. Amy Bonifant is a new author, much like Edwidge Danticat, and like, no wait, Edwidge actually, she's been writing since the 90s, so never mind about that. But like, it's good. It's worth checking out, and I hope to check out more books from Amy Bonifant's because you know, this one was so good. And then finally, I read a bunch of poems. You can find them on my Poetry Thursday videos, so make sure to check that out. In one instance, I substituted a response video instead of a poem called The Myth of Icarus, and that's a response video in regards to Ocpoeber, which is where Lucas from Bits of Lit and me, we are going to read the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket next month for Ocpoeber, and it's going to be a challenge, and whoever wins will get his golden shawl, the BookTube Federation Championship, and I'm hoping to win. Now on to the TBR. Next month is Ocpoeber, and I do want to make it very thematic next month. So every book that I read will have a very scary, supernatural, spooky, creepy twinge to it. Some of the books that I've picked out, that I already have picked out and I'm in the process of reading or will read, one of them is the Batman comic. It's a graphic novel. It's the omnibus of The Long Halloween, which I've been meaning to check out for a while, just because like that's one of my favorite stories about Batman. How he like has to fight off the mob and like a whole bunch of other super criminals in an effort to figure out what's going on with all these mysterious murders. I always love Batman. Between Batman and Spider-Man, they're both my favorite superheroes. So I would love in the future to read a Spider-Man comic too. I'm also going to read Dracula, a book that I'd never read before. I read Frankenstein in high school, and I enjoyed it. I am going to read Dracula just because, you know, it's Halloween. Best time to read it. I look forward to what I'm going to find. And then after that, I'll probably start the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket for the true heart of Ocpoeber. Look out for that on October 15th. I'm also going to try to check out The Crucible. I have been making more of an effort to read plays. Unfortunately, it's just been Shakespeare plays. So I want to try to read a spooky play about witches, or the lack of witches, by Arthur Miller. So that'll be fun to check out. And then after that, I do want to try to read Demon Theory by Stephen Graham Jones, who I read other books on this channel. The Only Good Indians, which was pretty good, and After the People Lights Have Gone Off, which is really good. And if you're looking for something spooky to read this October, that's a good short story collection that you can't go wrong with. And I reviewed it on this channel too, so if you want to check that out and get a feel for what it's about, it's definitely worth checking out. It's creepy and gross and horrifying all at once, and worth reading. There are other books that I want to try to get to this month, but we'll see if I actually do. I have a number of short stories that I want to get to because it's October. I want to look at least one of Poe's short stories. I'm thinking The Telltale Heart, which is one of his creepiest ones. But also, if we're going for suspense, I could check out The Pit and the Pendulum, which is good for like that anxiety of whether or not that person's gonna live in the pendulum or in the pit. So I would say, you know, I'll probably check that one out. We will see. I got a number of other books on my plate too that I want to short story collections that I want to get to. I'm also going to return to Harlan Ellison. I noted before that he was kind of misogynistic, very troublesome author, but I do want to check him out again because I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was terrifying, and I want to see if anything else that he has written has matched that height of spooky. I also want to check out Washington Irvin's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, a great short story that I read before, and it's always perfect for October because you got like this headless horseman hunting down people, or maybe not, who knows, worth reading. And then there's a bunch of other short stories that I want to get to as well that I don't really have planned, but they're all spooky Halloween themed. There are a number of poems, including the one I have planned for tomorrow, that are spooky flavored, creepy flavored, trying to stay on topic and focus on those scary poems about Halloween or, you know, the fall season. I'm gonna try to go for that. No specific ones named yet, but like it's always like find a poem and share it with everybody. Of course, there is a substitution I'm making in October. October 15th should be a Poetry Thursday, but I'll be focusing on the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket at that time. So you know, I won't be doing a poem on that day, but I will be, you know, battling wits with Lucas to determine who gets the Book 2 Federation Championship, which is always fun. So be on the lookout for that. I got a lot planned, and it's always fun to talk about the spooky and the scary. I also love to watch like horror movies during October, much more than I do during the regular part of the year. But like focusing on like maybe a horror movie a day, I recommend you all try that too, because a lot of the time you'll find scary movies that you haven't seen before. For instance, I watched Candyman last year, and I really enjoyed it. So like it was a movie I hadn't seen before, and I look forward to the remake when it comes out now. And so that's my TBR. If you have any suggestions for me about what kind of what stories that I might be missing out on that might be perfect for October, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear from you, especially because, you know, finding those spooky books is a lot of fun. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can make suggestions or, you know, based on my wrap-up, find books that might be of interest to them. Until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and spooky travels. Farewell.